It all started with a jarring accusation. "You thief," was the first text exchange. To the outside world, it was a mistake anyone could make. But little did we know it would be the start of an unlikely romance. The story unfolded with Kofi, an ordinary guy from Ghana. Kofi was smart but quiet, a tech guy by day and a self-proclaimed poet by night. He wasn't big on texting strangers, especially not those accusing him of theft. But that's exactly what happened when one evening he received a message accusing him of stealing. The text wasn't polite either. The words were loaded with anger. On the other side of this text was Nandi, a young woman living in Kenya, studying fashion, who had just discovered her phone was missing. She was convinced someone had stolen it, but soon she realized she could still access her contacts on her cloud. Her cousin came up with the bright idea of tracking the thief down by texting the number that last synced to her account. Now Kofi was minding his business, typing out poetry in his phone's notes, when a message flashed across his screen. "Thief, return my phone, or I'll have the police track you down." Kofi frowned, genuinely confused. Had someone hacked into his account? But he was too annoyed to ignore it, so he typed back, "Excuse me, you got the wrong number. No one here is a thief." That should have been the end of it, but Nandi was stubborn, and she was sure someone was lying. She fired back, calling him every name in the book. Kofi tried to explain calmly, even going so far as to send a picture of himself holding the phone, hoping to convince her. But to his surprise, she replied with a mocking laugh emoji. Kofi chuckled a bit. She was bold, he thought. Over the next few days, the two kept going back and forth. Texts would start with sarcasm and end in some weird conversation about their favorite foods or local music. She was a fan of Tanzanian music, while Kofi loved Afrobeat. As strange as it sounds, Kofi found himself looking forward to her texts. They had turned into something that felt almost familiar, like the banter between old friends. One day, Kofi's mother noticed him smiling at his phone and nudged him, asking, "Who is the girl?" Embarrassed, Kofi brushed it off, calling Nandi just some girl who thinks I stole her phone. But in his heart, he knew there was something different about their conversations. It felt real, something he hadn't felt in a long time. A few weeks later, in Kenya, the police had found Nandi's missing phone and recovered it from the person who stole it. Nandi was embarrassed when she realized her error of accusing Kofi of stealing her phone. She must tell him, she thought, hoping that he wouldn't be offended. After all, they had now become friends. Or so she thought. She called him to explain why she had accused him of stealing her phone and how the phone was recovered. All Kofi said in return was, "Oh, I see." Nandi thought all was well with their budding friendship until Kofi stopped texting or calling her. She sent him several messages but got no response from him. Back in Ghana, Kofi felt disconnected from his new chat buddy who accused him wrongly and rudely. He decided not to chat her again, nor respond to her chats. His mom, who noticed how he suddenly stopped chatting nor smiling as much, had to ask, "Kofi, what happened with your friend? You seem to have stopped chatting." Kofi explained all that had happened and why he stopped chatting her. His mom replied saying, It was a honest mistake, Kofi. You shouldn't take it so seriously. I saw how excited you were when you were chatting her. If I were you, I will reconnect back. That was the nudge he needed. Kofi called. Nandi was in the kitchen when her phone rang, and as she picked it, she was surprised to see that the caller was Kofi. Her heart bubbled up a few times as she hastily picked up. His voice was like warm water, flowing down her cheeks as she heard him say, "Hello, beautiful." Just like that, their conversation was reignited. They continued talking, but now with the honesty that their bond had grown from something ridiculous and raw. They talked about their families, dreams, and the small everyday struggles they both faced. Kofi was saving up to open a tech shop, while Nandi wanted to continue her fashion design abroad. Then came the day when Kofi did something neither of them had ever thought would happen. He bought a ticket and went to Kenya. Nervous and excited, he planned the trip as best he could, hoping that their meeting would be as comfortable as their endless texts and calls had been. When he arrived, there she was, waiting at the small airport. She looked just like she had described herself. Braids, a beautiful dress, and an open, genuine smile. They both laughed, saying it felt like they had known each other forever, yet it was only their first meeting. They spent that weekend exploring Nairobi, laughing and sharing meals, meeting Nandi's friends. It was as if those texts had been building up to this moment, and neither of them could deny the chemistry between them. They went back and forth, debating who had fallen first. She thought it was him, while he was sure she was already in love. As they said goodbye at the airport, they didn't feel sad. Instead, they felt hopeful, knowing their connection was real. They promised to keep talking, and this time without accusations. Two strangers brought together by a misdirected text and a case of mistaken identity.